Now, earlier this week, media reports indicated that Black Stars head coach Christopher Hughton was set to be out on his way. A supposed executive committee meeting was to be held today to decide on his fate before communicating a decision to the government who pay Chris Hughton's salary. Now, it appears Chris Hughton has survived the scare. Now, for more information on how this has happened, we've been joined via Zoom by Collins Atta Poku, a sports journalist. Hello, sir. Good evening. Welcome to the program.
Hi, good evening, Eugene. Thanks for having me.
Well, just a few days ago, Christopher Hughton granted an interview to Rahman Osman in London, speaking about his role heading into the next year's AFCON and his vision for the Black Stars. A few days later, now a whole story where there are issues about his role as Black Stars coach. How did we get here? What's the latest on that development?
Well, instructively, we can actually say that this is something that has been building behind the scenes for some time. And there have been dissenting voices aimed towards the coach of the Black Stars, Chris Hughton. Quite remember that executive committee member, Dr. Randy Abbey, came out and said that he's not meeting their expectations. The management committee chairman of the Black Stars and the vice president of the GFA, Makado, had similar sentiments to share. George Amwako was then an ESCO member, also said something like that. Then the team manager of the Black Stars, Mohamed Amin Shado, broke ranks and came to say that he feels that, look, Otwadu could have done a better job than what Chris Hughton is doing currently for us. So there's something that has been building in private behind the scenes, and also it's been made public. Right after the games against Mexico and the US, the Ghana Football Association started gauging the pulse of major stakeholders, and the stumbling block was obviously going to be that of the government. Government is currently paying amount owed to Milovan Rajevic and Sika Akono for the termination of their contract. So once they gauged a pulse of the government and didn't get the support they needed, it had become pretty obvious that the decision to do away with Chris Hughton, whom the GFA believes is not worth mortgaging our World Cup 2026 ambitions for, it was quite obvious that it was not going to happen. And we've had people in government, especially the leader of government business in Parliament, and the majority leader, Honorable State Chairman Sabons, who also doubles up as the Member of Parliament for Swami, saying that, look, he has not even watched Black Stars in recent times, but it is way too sudden for us to terminate the contract of a coach when we have the World Cup qualifier barely a week away, and also we have African Cup of Nations to play in January and February in Cote d'Ivoire. So it's the lack of support from government and the will to terminate and pay him up for him to leave that disturbed the plans of the FA. Ideally, after today's EXCO meeting, which Chris Hughton himself attended, he would have been told that Ghana has decided to do away with his services. But the powers that be, the appointing authority wanted him out, but the pay master felt that this was the wrong time to do that, and that's the reason why he's still at post today.
Well, very well. Now, let's look at Ketukweku's social media, where he posted yesterday that lies is becoming the order of the day in our media space. Clearly, he was calling out the journalist in a social media post. But throughout this whole saga, the FA has maintained its silence, even though Ketukweku has spoken. Now, what's the FA's interest and stance in this matter?
Well, their interest ordinarily is to foresee a betterment of Ghana football. But as an FA that is trigger happy, they wouldn't waste time in changing national team coaches. They've done that so many times. I genuinely would love to see him being clearer with this lies issue, because we are here, we are the press, we are willing to engage him on GH1 and prove to him with factual evidence that he had actually initiated the attempt to sack Chris Hughton, and he had made consultations with people in government, courting their support. He has sent messages to them and revered some of these messages. But the most important thing is that what he wanted to happen didn't happen. But we must all come together and find a way to go about qualifying for the World Cup in 2026.
But
he should also look himself in the mirror and ask, why have I changed so many coaches and still the Black Stars isn't doing well?
Exactly on that point. Let's go back here and look at it. Within the space of 4 years of Ketukweku administration, he's had about 4 coaches, with Chris Hughton being the 4th coach. But Chris Hughton's win rate is just 43%. However, Collins, if we look at Chris Hughton's last call-up, calling a player like Dede Ayew who doesn't have a club, calling several players like Kasim Adams as well, who has not played any minutes, and Edmonado, who has been underwhelming. Do you think Chris Hughton himself helps himself with this latest squad selection?
Well, I would personally admit that even the performance of the Black Stars in recent times hasn't been so good. We've not built upon what we had at World Cup. Some of the names in there, not just Kasim Adams and Andre, we could also extend it to Edmonado, who has not been active but is getting consistent call-ups. Baba Rahman, who is playing so well, but this time around is not called. Yes. It's bewildering at some point in time. He's not helping his cause, I must admit. But then the reality is, the GFA president has told us that he plays an active role in the selection of players into the Black Stars, and that it's not something he's willing to leave to just one person to do that. It comes back to the issue of who takes responsibility for what happens on the pitch. It is Chris Hughton. The spineless months we saw against USA, that lack of leadership performance, and in the absence of Thomas Partey, what do we have to do? Obviously, we'll have to get Andre Ayew back, because if for nothing at all, he offers some sense of leadership on the pitch when he's with the team. And I must admit, like, I hold up my hands. It's not the first time you're having an issue of a player being clubless or not being attached to a club and playing. The example of Macbeth Sibaya in South Africa always reminds me of something. Yeah. But I want to ask, what is Black Stars really trying to achieve?
Well, Collins, we are running out of time, but very quickly, I just want to ask one question. We've heard of issues with George Boateng trying to replace him. That rumor has it. Now, what will be the relationship between Chris Hughton and George Boateng, particularly because we've heard George's name as a potential replacement for him? That's the final question.
Well, Chris Hughton actually took